Welcome to 10,000 Things, the live vidcast with two sisters writing and publishing, where you get to learn the 10,000 things about writing, publishing, and promoting your book. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins.
And I'm Catherine Greenspan.
And tonight we have a really special show because we have a special guest, attorney Eric Williams, who, oh my God. I'm sorry, I had some noise interference. Very excited tonight because we have a very special guest, the genius lawyer, Eric Williams. He is brilliant when it comes to intellectual property and answering all the questions that writers need to know about the legalities of writing and publishing a book. So Eric, welcome to 10,000 Things.
Pleasure being here. Great seeing you guys.
Welcome, Eric.
So just a little background, we met Eric at the University of Michigan, Go Blue, see that big old sign behind him, that flag? And we were all English majors together and we all love writing. And then Eric went on to get his master's degree from Cambridge University in England. And then he got a law degree from Columbia University in New York City. And he's gone on to really gain a lot of expertise and experience in intellectual property law. And so we're really blessed this evening to have Eric here to answer some of the most common questions we get about what's okay, what's allowed, and what's not, and what could land you in a courtroom. So Eric, we're really excited to talk with you tonight.
More than happy to help people avoid having to hire me down the road to get them out of trouble. Prevention
Right.
is much less expensive than cure.
Yes. Excellent. I'm sorry about my little technical glitch. I had this loud sound come in and it was really weird, but it was like the ta-da, here's Eric. So really excited that you're here. So first, a question that we always get when I'm teaching writing workshops or when people contact us, they want to know, will I get in trouble if I write something bad about my uncle who did something terrible to me when I was little, or my cousin who does this, that, and the other? What are the rules around writing about other people and things they might have done, especially if they might have been illegal?
Right. So the general rule when it comes to libelous kind of stuff, libel or slander, is it's all about the reputation of the person, right, that you're writing about. So the first thing to remember is, if it's true, even doesn't have to be exactly true down to every little detail, but if it's true, you're okay, right? The problem, of course, becomes when it's not true, or you sort of exaggerate that kind of thing. So the thing to remember is that defamation, which is what the lawsuit would be, is based on state law. So there's no sort of like federal law. This isn't something that's going to pop up usually in federal court. This is going to be something, and it varies from state to state, right? But in the state of Michigan, for example, something is defamatory by law, basically, if you're by statute, if you're accusing somebody of criminal activity or something that goes to their morality. So, making them out to be a hoe, that kind of thing is actually the kind of thing that can get you in trouble by statute if it's not true.
Wow.
Also, under the common law, there's some other things that are considered defamatory, but it has to be, if it's true, right, you're really not going to run into a problem. If the person is deceased, right, you're probably not going to run into a problem because, they can't bring the lawsuit. Maybe their state could, but generally speaking, stay away from saying things that aren't true. It's probably the best advice I can give you. If it is true, stick to the facts.
So what would be like a factual account for somebody's reputation? Like if they're convicted of a crime that indicates that they are exactly what you're showing them to be, or?
Well, I mean, if they've been convicted of the crime that you're claiming that they did, then clearly you can't. Yeah, you're in pretty good hands there. The problem becomes if you're alleging somebody committed a crime
Right.
and they've never been charged with it and the like, right? It doesn't mean they can't sue you. The question is whether or not they're going to win. Right?
Fascinating. Okay. So what exactly does defamation, libel, and slander, what do those words really mean?
Well, so I mean, defamation is just basically that, like I said, it's something that negatively affects somebody's reputation. It's specifically with that. And if you look under, and I'll see if I can pull up the exact Michigan law on it. So in Michigan, I mean, when you talk about libel, it's libel versus slander. It's a written word versus the spoken word or gestures, right? But under Michigan, right, that's basically the only difference. But those are just kinds of defamation, right? So, and it goes to publishing, right? So in Michigan, the elements of a defamation case are a false and defamatory statement about the person in an unprivileged publication, so something you say in court or to your lawyer, to a third party, right? And you were at least negligent on the part of the publisher. And the last part is basically harm, unless it's something that falls under defamation per se, which is that chastity and criminal offense part. But other than that, you have to prove sort of actual harm.
Oh, wow. This all sounds something that you just really want to avoid.
For sure.
Yes.
At all costs.
Yeah, you pretty much do. But I mean, but the thing you got to remember is there are exceptions, right? So you have more leeway when it comes to talking about a public figure or an elected official, right? In those cases, in order to win, they have to prove sort of actual malice, that you were actually your intention in doing it was to do them harm and harm their reputation.
So here I have a question, a specific example. Like, let's say somebody's writing their memoir and they had an encounter with a politician that was private, and this politician got into trouble much later, and that person now wants to publicize that encounter.
I don't see a problem with that. If it's true, there's not a problem there.
I love it.
Right?
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's perfectly clear.
Wow. That's so relevant to today's news. Wow. Thank you. Okay, here's something we get all the time. People write a book, they bring it to us. It's full of lines from movies and song lyrics and all kinds of copyrighted material. And we tell them you can't publish other people's song lyrics. That's copyrighted material. That's copyright infringement. People do not like to hear that. So Eric, what is the rule about copyright infringement and using song lyrics, movie lines, etc.?
Okay, so to begin with, a copyright is your right to essentially exclusive control over something, right, that you have created and put in a tangible format, right? So it has to be original authorship put in a tangible format. And once you have done that, by virtue of creating it, you have the sole and exclusive right to perform it in public, reproduce it, copy it, all that, okay? You can't really sue on it until you register the copyright, but technically you have the copyright the moment you create it. If you own it and create it, there has to be a reason that someone else can use it. Okay, so this isn't the Wild West. Almost anything you encounter is owned by somebody. Since ownership arises from creation, everything's owned by somebody. So the question becomes, is there some reason that you think you can use it? Now, one of the things is that it's in the public domain, right? So it's been, the author's been dead for like 90 years, okay? And I mean, and the time, how long a copyright lasts depends on when it was created. So there's a break between things created before 1978 and things created after 1978. But generally speaking, if the person's been like Shakespeare's works, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, they're, you know, it's the copyright is pretty much expired on that. If you remember, at one point, Apple gave away copies of E.B. White's Winnie the Pooh when they gave out. Well, the reason is because the copyright had expired and they could freely give those away. Similarly, there used to be channels on stream like old Stooges, Three Stooges TV shows. Again, the copyright had expired. Okay. So those are in the public domain. Clearly, you can use those. If it's not in the public domain, the next reason you can use it is because that person gave you permission. There you go. If it's not in the public domain and that person hasn't given you permission, then what really comes up is what you're going to be relying on is fair use. And that's a tricky thing to rely on, right? Because what constitutes fair use is something that's basically evaluated on a case-by-case basis, right? There's no clear line. So you hear people say, oh, you can use a line of a song or 10 notes off a beat. No, none of that is true. You can't, right? So you can use fair use for things like commentary or criticism, or if you're teaching a class, those are the kind of instances where fair use comes into play. But you just can't snatch somebody else's material, the thing somebody else created, and incorporate it into yours, because essentially you're creating a derivative work, right, of what they originally made. And you don't have a right to do that. That's why they have a copyright.
Wow. So always get written permission.
If at all possible, yes.
Wow, that's really powerful.
What consider this. Well, can I say this? A lot of times people want to use parts of a play or a song or whatever. But if you want to include a poem, maybe create your own and include it. Unless there's a specific reason for incorporating something, something that was specifically created by someone else. It's your creative work. Try to keep your creative work. Now, clearly, like I said, if what we're talking about is commentary on what it is you're quoting, then yeah, that sort of falls under the category of fair use. I would say this, and I want to make sure when you look this up, give you the exact thing. There is literally the USPTO has a website called the Fair Use Index, not the USPTO, US Copyright Office. So if you just Google copyright fair use index, and it gives you basically the ability to search under different kinds of situations. Like, are you talking about music? Are you talking about poems? And then you can search by jurisdiction and see kind of what the courts in that jurisdiction have ruled as fair use.
Wow,
it used to be,
that's
it's very handy. Like I said, it's the Fair Use Index. You can just Google U.S. Copyright Fair Use Index, and it'll come up. What an attorney would do is actually do a similar kind of search using different tools, but to be able to give you a realistic, sort of opinion of whether or not what you plan on doing would constitute fair use.
Wow, thank you for that resource, Eric. That is so helpful. Wow, I'm going to definitely use that. It's because, again, we get so many questions, and a lot of people just don't understand that you can't use song lyrics, because song lyrics are like in the fabric of our lives, right? Your first wedding song, your first, your wedding dance, and people want to tell those stories and use the lyrics, and just can't. And I also discovered when we were working on a big book that you can't quote some of the major newspapers without permission and paying them a lot of money to quote from articles. Oh my gosh, that was a real rude awakening. Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it. I mean, you used to work for a newspaper. I mean, you understand all the hard work that goes into putting together a news article, reporting something, right?
Right.
I know, Catherine, right? And you just don't want somebody taking your creation, doing something with it, which you may or may not approve, but you're not getting paid for it. Or, I mean, how is that fair?
Right. No, I mean, it's not. But when you're writing and you want some like documentation and you want it from an official source, I used to think until you told me otherwise that you could quote from newspapers because they're like the record of what's happening in the world. And I also thought a long time ago that the Fair Use Act had a different meaning than what you explained. So that's why I always tell authors, when in doubt, ask a lawyer, because your interpretation of what you read online or somebody told you might not be accurate. So thank you for clarifying this, Eric.
Well, and it's like Eric said, if you want to put somebody's poem, write your own poem. If you want to quote a newspaper article, paraphrase, use your writing skills and paraphrase. And of course, end notes and footnotes.
Right. And of course, if you're writing about something that's happening, right? So it's one thing to just take a news article's description of what happened, but it's different if you say, for example, the conservative media had this kind of take on it, and then you're quoting. Well, that falls in the line of fair use because you're commenting on what the paper was saying. You're not just taking the atmosphere and ambiance created by another, artist and using it, just taking advantage of that. That's not what you're doing. You're making a legitimate commentary on their work and their perspective. And that then we're starting to fall into the fair use category.
Oh, well, that's fascinating. So what about when you compose content for a website and you post it? Can you copyright that?
Well, so so generally speaking, right, what we're always talking about is whether or not you can register the copyrights. Technically, once you've created something, you have the copyright. So yeah, you can register the copyright for website content, right? So you can register, in fact, up to 50, I think, 20, 40, 50 separate a group of literary works that are online, published online at once. It's not that big a deal. It's like, I don't know, like $45 or something like that. Online. It's not an expensive or difficult process, and you can register that. You can certainly, if you're uploading original images, you can certainly copyright those. But chances are you may have registered the copyright before you publish them on the internet. I mean, we're assuming they're yours, right? You have to be the creator or the owner of the copyright before you can register it. So you can do that. You can't register URLs. You can't register short names. You can't register short phrases. There has to be some creative authorship involved in it. So and generally you can't. I mean, in the website itself, what you're registering, you're not registering, the branding or anything else. Some of that stuff might fall under trademark, right? But under copyright, it wouldn't. So the difference between copyright and trademark is that a trademark is, the trademark rights are something you acquire by use, and it's something to indicate the source of goods or services that are being provided. A copyright protects your right to a creative thing that you've made, right? So it's your right in whatever that tangible thing is that you've created.
Fascinating. Have you noticed any changes in our world in how it's affected? I mean, there's been a lot of conversations about the First Amendment this year. Have you noticed any changes in how that might affect copyright and writers' boundaries?
Well, so a lot of the First Amendment stuff that's coming up is fortunately not the kind of thing people tend to copyright. But what's come up a lot is whether it are statements and memes and the like that are simply factually inaccurate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one could
Mm-hmm.
even say defamatory in some regard.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, a lot of this has been directed at the public officials who, generally speaking, under American law, don't have any much in the way of recourse. That's not the same in England, for example. You will see public figures, elected officials actually suing over things like that, which they would never do in the U.S. They would win.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's there are a lot of things out there being said that simply, just simply don't comport to reality.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, people aren't trying to copyright that kind of stuff. They're just out
Right.
there saying it, and it just blows in the wind. Yeah, the world is crazy.
It really, really is, but it all kind of swirls into this abysmal glom of wrongness, and it just is confusing. It's like a cloud when you try to sift through and understand, well, what can I do here in my writing,
Right. Well, artists are an important part of preserving our democracy, calling the people in power to calling them to account, and also providing a lot of inspiration. I mean, there was one, when we talk about trademark, it's kind of, about copyright, it's kind of interesting because it is a derivative work, but there's been a meme or an image floating around that shows Kamala's profile. Walking, but behind her, cast like a shadow, is the little girl from Norman Rockwell's painting, right? If you're in the original painting, there was like tomato stained, and there were federal agents behind her, and it was from, oh God, I feel horrible. I've forgotten the young lady's name. Well, she's no longer a young lady, but the woman who was one of the first people integrating schools down south, and they sort of superimposed Kamala's, profile as though that is her reflection. And it's actually quite profound when you think about it, how far we've come.
Yes.
But at the same time, it raises, potential. I mean, I don't know if the copyright is still around on that, but, potentially it raises those kind of issues, right? A derivative work. But it also could be seen as, for the Norman Rockwell picture, but it also could be seen as commentary, right? It's not, you see what I mean?
Yes.
So art is commentary in many respects, right? It's not just entertainment, it's commentary. Right. So, it's interesting. I would think fair use would possibly falls into the fair use category. But you'd have to look.
Mm-hmm. So Eric, what's your advice to the new writer out there who's writing a book and they have some question marks? So for example, what if their mother used drugs and their mother's still alive, but maybe the mother doesn't use drugs anymore, but she wants to tell the story about her family in the truest possible sense? Is there any legal ramification that could occur if you put that kind of thing in your book?
Well, your mom is probably going to be really pissed at you. And, hey, and your mom could sue you, but if it's true, your mom isn't going to win. Eminem got sued, by his mother for all sorts of things he said. So, it's saying that somebody is a drug addict and you are calling them out specifically, right, it's clearly something that's going to damage their reputation. But if they've been in and out of rehab most of your life, or have been convicted of purchasing drugs tons of times, and then one, how much damage have you really done to their reputation? And two, it's true. So again, that kind of I would talk to your mother first, though.
But a lot of people,
at least give her a heads up.
A lot of people want to write their memoir and they want to tell a truthful story because these things impacted who they became and how they survived a lot of circumstances. But they always ask me, well, what's the answer? And I say, ask a lawyer, because I'm not a lawyer and you should just do the right thing and, follow the rules. So is that your advice, Eric, that people should have a lawyer review their book before they publish it?
Oh, yeah, certainly. You should probably have a lawyer review it if you're talking about real people who are alive and you're saying things that might damage their reputation and they are identifiable, right? If you change it to just Tom from Westland, right? You're okay because it's not damaging a person's reputation because you can't identify who the person is. So, that's one thing I always say. But and also think about, would you say this to that person's face, right? I mean,
Ooh.
because that's essentially what you're doing because they're going to read it
Right.
at some point. But if it's true, it's true. A friend of mine from elementary school actually wrote his memoir, and I'm in it. And he was nice enough to send me an autographed copy afterwards. And he said, turn to this page, and it describes me beating up a kid with a chain in elementary school. And I'm like, actually, that's what happened. And he didn't.
That's terrible.
What? The kid was a bully. But anyway, he didn't describe. He didn't use the kid whose name I beat up, his real name, because he I guess because he didn't want to make him look bad. But at the time he published it, the guy had been in jail for the last 10 years. I mean, so I don't know if he could have ruined his reputation either. He pretty much,
wow.
He didn't change from fourth grade. I mean,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Oh no, that's shocking. It's just, and what was your reaction?
I thought he described the situation beautifully. It was almost poetic.
Oh my God. Okay.
But yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. And it was true and it happened and it was real. No embellishments. The only other advice I would give you is this. If you're going to write about someone and you're going to say something that's potentially defamatory, and you say, oh, it's true, but think about it before you write it, because just because that's the way you remember something doesn't mean that is in fact the way it happened.
Oh.
There may have been things that happened that you weren't aware of at the time or that you've forgotten as you recall it. So you do have an obligation, if you're writing these things, to make sure that they are true. And as well as the publisher has an obligation to, generally speaking, to make sure that what they're publishing is true, even if they didn't write it. So you should probably, ask other people, hey, is that how you remember it? Or, did you keep a journal at the time? Or you have to make some effort to make sure that it's true. You just can't, oh, I remember it. Because the truth is, the things that you recall most frequently are the things you actually misremember the most, because this is sort of a function of memory. I don't know if this falls into lawyer stuff, but it's a function of memory that the more often you remember something, you have to remember it's not like these memories are on a shelf and you just go get them. Basically, you're creating them whole, recreating them every time.
Wow.
And so inevitably they get influenced by how you're feeling at the time. Your relationship with the person that you may be remembering, it may have changed over the years. So your interpretation of events may change, which is why, eyewitnesses aren't always that reliable. So I would do some actual factual, verification of what you're going to write before you just put it down on paper and publish it.
Great advice.
So Isabel Allende has a great saying, a quote, and it's, memories are like corks left out of bottles, they swell.
I like that. My mother has a similar take on memory. She said, we never get them ready-made. We create them new with whatever we have on hand at the time. And it's the same thing.
Yep.
Wow.
Just because
that's
you remember it
fascinating.
doesn't mean it was true. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Woo. All right.
Fascinating stuff.
It is. It is fascinating, and it's like kind of stressful, but it shouldn't
Yeah.
it shouldn't hinder the creative process. It should just be like something that you arm yourself with knowledge to protect yourself, so that what you do publish is safe and acceptable.
Yeah.
My tip for
Exactly.
writers would be write what you want, like write your draft exactly the way you want it to be, and then go back and look at it and go, maybe I might not, maybe I need to change a name, maybe I need to, just don't let the fact that you can and can't say certain things about certain people stop you from getting the words down. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to get, when you publish it and share it, to have it in a non-suable state.
Yeah. No, well, that's exactly it. And in fact, that's why a lawyer is good to review it. Just write whatever you think, right? But if you share it with, like, 4 of your friends, then you've published it and you're potentially in trouble. But if you're sharing it with your lawyer or your editor, then those are privileged communications, right? With your lawyer, it's privileged. With your publisher, there's usually an agreement that sort of stops them from, a contractual agreement that stops them from, shouting it out to the world at that juncture. So, and at that point is when you sort of maybe cut back on what you're saying, if that has to happen. But yeah, I would never suggest that anybody allow that kind of worry to impede their creativity. Yeah.
Beautifully said. Love that. That's a great way to wrap things up. Any parting advice you'd might like to share, Eric, with writers who are having questions about what's allowed and what's not?
Yeah, just put yourself in the shoes of any other artist whose work you're contemplating using, right? As the start. I mean, you wouldn't want someone to take your work, your words, your images, your descriptions, and make a profit off of them, or create something that you think is horrible, right? That's why lots of artists told Trump not to use their songs. Right.
Yes.
You don't have complete control over your creative work once it leaves your hands, but you certainly do have some. And so other artists definitely should feel the same way. So tap into your own creativity, embrace that, rather than hitch it on to the creativity of someone else, predicated upon someone else's eloquence or imagination.
Right.
Go with your own.
And you can always ask for permission.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but whoever does that.
Well, Eric, we're so grateful that you spent this time with us here on 10,000 Things to share your legal expertise and experience to help all the writers out there know what they can and cannot do when it comes to copyright laws and such. So
My pleasure.
Thanks, Eric.
Yes.
Hey, it's great seeing you guys.
You
always
too.
Great to see you. So you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, Eric, and wish you wellness and the best for you and your family.
Same here. Same to you. Tell your mom I said hi.
She's watching.
I'm in
we're 2 sisters and we consider Eric our brother. We don't have any brothers, but Eric's like a brother to us. So we immensely appreciate you, Eric.
After all these years, it's the least I deserve.
Yes. And for all of you out there, if you found value in 10,000 Things, please like, share, subscribe, and comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you have any more questions, please do put them in the comments, and we'd love to get some answers for you in some future episodes of 10,000 Things. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins.
And I'm Catherine Greenspan.
And thank you very much for watching tonight. Thank you, Eric, and happy writing to all of you.
We love you, Eric.
Love you, Eric.
Mwah.
Mwah.